Let me start out with while I was sitting on the beach in Roatan, the Donald Trump lobbed a bunch of Tomahawk missiles owned by Raytheon, in which he owns stock, which went up in price into Syria, into an airport in Syria, which the next day they were using to take planes off and bomb Homs again. It seems to me that um, he's following in a long tradition, a long and fine tradition of American presidents that really started with Ronald Reagan. Arguably, it really started with Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher in 1978 became Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, and the first thing she did was break the coal miners' union. Now, the coal miners' union at that time in 1978 in the UK was the largest and most powerful union in the United Kingdom, and it was like, don't go near that. Those guys, they will eat your lunch. They got power. She busted them up, and but that hurt her popularity tremendously. And her whole privatization thing, and all this stuff. It all started out with this, and what this led to was, as her poll numbers just went down and down and down, she was like, okay, I need a little war. So there's this little island off the coast of Argentina, the Falklands, that was home to mostly penguins. And Argentina and the United Kingdom had argued over centuries over who owned it. So she was like, okay, we're going to take this island back from Argentina. And, it took a couple of days, and it was no big deal, and it was a small war, and her numbers just went right up into the sky. So a year later, Reagan comes in, and he looks around, and he goes, okay, the things are, and within 2 or 3 years, he's had a recession. He's doing crazy stuff. He's being conservative. Nobody agrees with it. Oh, let's wreck Social Security. Let's, this, that, and the other thing. And his numbers are in the crapper. So he decides that he's got to have a little war. So he invades Grenada. In fact, a friend of mine who was the assistant to the president, Maurice Bishop, was the president at the time of Grenada. And my friend ended up in Cuba for 4 years, hiding out, basically, after Reagan invaded Grenada. But that was his little war. And then George Herbert Walker Bush, he had to have a little war to get himself reelected and to jack his popularity up. And so he attacked Saddam Hussein after he told him, sure, go ahead and take Kuwait. Oh, no, we're not going to let you do that. Boom, 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 boom. And it didn't work out quite so well for George Herbert Walker Bush. As his son pointed out in 1999, had his daddy had a bigger war in Iraq that lasted longer, like right up till the election, he probably would have gotten reelected. But he didn't, and he wasn't, and so there was that. Bill Clinton got involved in Bosnia, although he was very reluctant. I mean, it took, I think, 3 months of just watching parts of Bosnia, particularly Kosovo, just being devastated before he did anything. And then, of course, George W. Bush comes along, and he's got to have a war. So he has his war in Afghanistan, and then he has another one in Iraq. That turned out really well. And now Trump has, this is his equivalent of Grenada in the Falklands, in my opinion. It's done a marvelous job of distracting people from the investigations into all the people on his staff, including the latest Jared Kushner meeting with the Russians. Oh, my God. And it's like everybody's hysterical about this. But, hey, we changed the subject. He got us off that topic. And nobody's talking about, how the tax cut policy that he's putting together. He does not want to do away with that deduction that allowed him to take $1 billion deduction or nearly on his taxes and not pay taxes theoretically for 20 years. We don't know because we haven't seen his returns. And he does want to do away with the one tax that he did pay for the 1 year that we do know something about, which was the alternative minimum tax. He paid $30 million plus on that. Oh, let's do away with that tax. So there's that. But after this happened, I mean, this happened while President Xi was here. And President Xi he's the guy, he comes from an affluent background. He knows how to conduct himself. He understands foreign policy. You don't get to be president of China by being an idiot. President Xi is no dummy. And so he just kind of let Donald Trump have his time in the sun and shook his hand and was very friendly. and in fact said, "Oh yeah, we'll let you import American beef into China. But beef imports into China have been banned since 2003. Give Trump a bone, right? Literally, we'll take the T-bones." But once he gets back to the China, New York Times reports, Jane Perlas on April 8th, with President Xi Jinping safely out of the United States and no longer President Trump's guest, China state-run media on Saturday was free to denounce the missile strike on Syria, which the American president told Mr. Xi about while they were finishing dinner. Xinhua, the state news agency on Saturday, called the strike the act of a weakened politician who needed to flex his muscles. Every now and then, China gets it right. In fact, actually far more often than every now and then. In an analysis, Xinhua also said Mr. Trump had organized the strike to distance himself from Syria's backers in Moscow to overcome accusations that he was, quote, pro-Russia. The unflattering assessment reflected China's official opposition to military interventions in the affairs of other countries, but it was also a criticism of Mr. Trump himself, who Mr. Xi had hoped was a man China could deal with. Right. That didn't work out all that well. Meanwhile, and this is very troubling. This is stuff we probably should be talking to Stephen Cohen about, but we'll let this cool down for right now and see what happens. But a joint command center. This is by Peter Walker and Sean Walker in the Guardian on April 9th. A joint command center made up of the forces of Russia, Iran, and militias supporting the Syrian president Bashar al-Assad said the attack, this is Trump's Raytheon Tomahawk missiles he owns stock in the company attack, said the attack had crossed red lines and that these three countries, Iran, Russia, and Syria, would respond to any new aggression, and Russia and Iran would increase their support for their ally. And meanwhile, Boris Johnson, the British Foreign Secretary, has canceled a trip to Russia. Rex Tillerson is heading out there day after tomorrow. We'll see where that goes. But I think that the real key to this whole thing is this great piece that Trita Parsi wrote for the Huffington Post. He's the president of the National American Iranian Council, or National Iranian American Council. Yeah, but Trita Parsi is absolutely brilliant. And it's titled, Why Trump's Syria Strike Will Not End Well. And it really boils down to one thing. There is no plan. There's just no plan. By now, Trita Parsi writes, it is clear that the missile strike has not impeded Assad from using his air force to strike rebel strongholds. Syrian warplanes, in fact, reportedly, carried out strikes yesterday against rebel cities near the city of Homs, taking off from the very airbase hit by U.S. missiles. So Trump even gave Assad advance notice via Russia, although he didn't tell Congress. And this is where I'm with Bernie. I mean, Assad's a terrible man, and what he's doing in Syria is to his own people is, if nothing else, a horror and a war crime. But blowing up an airstrip without even hitting the runway, apparently, because the jets are taking off the next day. This was just, in my opinion, this was just Trump wagging the tail. I think he was trying to say to President Xi, hey, I'm gonna be a tough guy. Xi was obviously not impressed. And he's risking World War III here. And, this is the same guy who ran on a campaign of, no more stupid foreign wars. I mean, if you're really concerned, Donald Trump, about the children of Syria, stop the stupid refugee ban and bring some of them here. So we've got the whole Syria thing, and we can talk about that more if you would like. I'm not sure exactly what to say beyond what I already said. I mean, I think it's so apparent to me that there's no plan, there's no strategy. The reality in Syria is extraordinarily messy. Russia has a deep water port there. So, I mean, just flip this around and think about if there was a civil war going on in Qatar or the UAE. And by the way, there have been attempts, but they brutally put down dissent in those countries, and we support them in doing that. which Assad tried to do, and you know, and the Russians tried to support him in that. He was unsuccessful. He's got a civil war on his hands. But you know, in the places where we've got military bases, we wouldn't tolerate that, or another country coming in. So you've got that, number one. Number two, you've got Bashar al-Assad is an Alawite, which is a kind of a variation of Shiism, and yet it's a Sunni majority country. And then on top of that, you know, 100 years of Saudi Arabia funding radical Sunnism, Wahhabism, has infected not only that entire region, but literally the entire planet with this, you know, 17th century strain, 16th century strain of Islam that is to this day being promoted with your and my oil dollars by Saudi Arabia. And it's just an absolute mess. And now Trump wants to insert the United States in it. We've got soldiers on the ground there. I mean, you know, shades of Vietnam in 1964. It's I mean, before anybody was paying attention, but we had advisors on the ground. So there's that.